not why we put the star up there. That is not where it came from to begin with. It came from the ancient pagans placed sun disk on top of the fir tree 3,000 years ago. Here's another one. Looks very similar. Another Christmas tree, and very clearly at the very top of the tree is a sun. It's a sun disk. They don't even know why they're putting that disc up there, but it is tradition that we put a star on top of the tree, and it is not representative of the star in Bethlehem. It is the star of the sun disk and the solar wheel of the pagan sun god Nimrod or Baal. Right here, even the 8-pointed star on top of the White House, their Christmas tree in the United States. So just where did we get that star? Well, now you know. Now let's move to our last pagan symbol, and probably the most prevalent pagan symbol in the world today is the obelisk. Literally means Baal's shaft or Baal's organ of reproduction. It's almost always placed in the center of a circle, which represents the female genitalia and the physical sexual act. Ladies and gentlemen, this that we see all over the world today in virtually every city, and I'm going to show it to you, is none other than the representation of the male organ of Baal. And it is said that the sun gods live inside of these things, and we have them everywhere. Here's one in Turkey. Cleopatra's Needle in London. This is the oldest obelisk in Scotland. One in Switzerland. Germany. Traveling all over the world, we see the fingerprints of the enemy. Paris, France. You can even see the ancient pagan hieroglyphics on the sides. In Mecca. Folks, Mecca, Islam. Luxor in Egypt, near the River Nile. This is in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We're shifting continents now. Dedicated to sun god Ra, who is said to live inside. One in Amsterdam. One in Ethiopia. Mongolia. And look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an aerial view of the Vatican. Now, you can decide for yourself what that looks like, but that is, if the enemy is from the beginning, has his fingerprints all over this, and he used the Roman Catholic Church as a springboard for the rest of the world to promulgate sun god worship, then what you are looking at is none other than an aerial view of the male organ of Nimrod. Matter of fact, I will prove it to you. It is facing directly west, due west. Matter of fact, I put my cursor on the Google images, and it is to the degree west. Not off by 1 degree. It is pointing due west right into the setting sun, which is the major symbol of Baal, the sun god. Now, you see the sun wheel there again. Let's zoom in and look what you find. You find the largest obelisk in the world, dead center, in the Vatican, in St. Peter's Square, in the hub, coming out of the circles of the sun wheel. Even in the Washington Monument, ladies and gentlemen, it is not Washington Monument. Where do you think they got that symbol from? It is the same obelisk that is 5,000 years old, coming straight from Baal. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. We see it in our churches. Where did we get the idea to put obelisks on our churches? All across America. From sea to shining sea, and all over the world, you see the obelisk attached to the very temples that we call the Church of God. You can make your own conclusions and your own ideas, but I believe it comes straight from, clearly historically comes straight from Nimrod and his pagan cultic symbols. But that's not what it means to me. Well, I know. I was there and I remember those feelings. And Jim, that's great. All this information is fascinating. That all this paganism came from Baal and sun god worship and all of these horrible things that happen when they worship their gods. But that's not what it means to me. When I go to church and it has a obelisk attached to it, that's not what we think it means. Well, I would ask if you could have another interpretation of why it's there. But number two, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means to us here in just a moment. So just hold on to your hat there. The early reformers, when they came out of Rome, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, they removed the obelisk as the monuments of idolatry, and Martin Luther himself called the organ an ensign of Baal. So let me ask a question. When do you think the birthday of Nimrod and Tammuz was? It was on the first day of the year when the sun is reborn. It's called the winter solstice. December 25th. December 25th was their birthday. Let me say that again so that everybody can soak this in for just a moment. The birthday of the pagan sun gods, of every pagan sun god, from the Mayan religion to the Greeks to the Romans to the Phoenicians, you name it, every single one of them, their birthdays are on the winter solstice, December 25th. We do not celebrate the birthday of Jesus for any other reason other than it was changed by Constantine in the late 300s to make it easier for the pagan sun worshipers to convert to Christianity. He changed the date. From December 25th, he changed the god that they were worshiping. So instead of worshiping their sun gods, they're now worshiping Jesus. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm married. And my wife would probably not be okay with me celebrating her birthday on the same birthday as one of my old girlfriends that I dated for years when I was in high school. Honey, do you think that it would be okay if I celebrate your birthday on June 1st instead of, February 4th? Would you be okay with that? Because I'm just used to doing that date. I don't think so. So if we would not be okay with that, then how much more the God of the universe, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yahweh and his son Yeshua, be okay with us celebrating such a holy event on the same day as every pagan sun god that ever lived, their birthday. But that's not what it means to me. We're going to come back to that. All sun gods from every region might have had different names, but they can all be traced back to the original sun god, Baal, aka Nimrod. One of the largest cultic and pagan celebrations took place during the winter solstice. Why? Because this is when the sun is reborn. And at this time is the days when the years, when the year begins to get, the day begins to get longer. This is the first day of the year that the day gets longer. And so they called it the sun is reborn. And it was a very, very important time back then because it was cold. And it was an exciting time that spring was on its way. And that's where the 25th comes from. And guess what the Chaldeans called this day? The Chaldeans called this day Yule Day, which literally means the day of the infant, talking about Tammuz, who was the sun god who would one day come back and save them from the world. Sound familiar? Along with the celebration of the sun gods, the Scandinavians also worshipped a god named Odin, who is the god of intoxicating drink and ecstasy, as well as the god of death. He was in charge of pretty much all the other gods. He was, for all intents and purposes, Baal, or the sun god. And who did he end up becoming in today's culture? Well, just as our slide says, it's Santa Claus, which we call St. Nicholas. And Nicholas, coincidentally, means mighty one, which is exactly what Nimrod means. Odin was the god of wisdom, magic, and occult knowledge. He was the god of runes, poetry, and war, and his name meant the inspired one. He was a tall, old man that had a long white beard and carried a spear or a crozier. Interesting. He traveled around the world on a white horse that had 8 legs. And the 8 legs became, of course, the 8 reindeer. And I'll explain how that happened in a little bit. And in virtually every version of Claus, he carries along behind him a dark helper, which eventually became the elves. The main symbol of this mystical being that had godlike powers was the eternal fir tree. We're just giving some descriptions of Odin here. The main symbol of the true God, Yahweh, from the garden in Genesis to the New Jerusalem in Revelation, is the tree of life. So it doesn't surprise me that the main symbol of the counterfeit is going to be a tree as well. By the 1500s in Holland, there he became Sinterklaas, a kind and wise old man with a white beard, white dress, red cloak, and a crozier, and riding the skies and roofs of the houses on his white horse, accompanied by his blackjacks, leaving gifts for people under his sacred tree, the fir tree. Now, what kind of horse does Yeshua, the Messiah, come back on at the end of time? He comes back on a white horse. He would visit you on his birthday during the winter solstice in December 25th, and give you gifts if you've been good, or if you were bad, his blackjacks would beat you. So be good for goodness sake. By the 1700s, a Dutchman who immigrated to North America brought this Sinterklaas with him. And in the English dialect, it was then changed to Santa Claus. Then in the 1930s, a designer for the Coca-Cola company was trying to get people in the wintertime to buy their drink. So what did they do? They came up with an ingenious idea. They took their colors, remembered this Sinterklaas of old, they mixed and mingled the two, changed a few things, and out came the modern Santa Claus, complete with reindeer and elves. Now, it's also interesting to point out that in the 1600s, they had plays, were very big in the 1600s. And St. Nicholas, they turned him into, they called it St. Nick. St. Nicholas really wasn't a real person, it was a demon. And anytime this demon would come on the stage, he would announce himself by saying the following 3 words. Ho, ho, ho. That's where we get ho, ho, ho from. It is literally all the way back to the 1600s when they did plays, and Satan would introduce himself coming on stage as ho, ho, ho. And before he became the Sinterklaas and then eventually today's Santa Claus, Odin was a demon. He was the god of death. And as time went on, what they did was they took this Saint Nick concept, which means the mighty one, which is where Nimrod came from, and they made the demon the slaves of Odin instead of Odin himself, and it made it a lot more palatable, and they were the black ravens or the black slaves or the wolves, and eventually Coca-Cola got rid of those and created the elves. So that's where we kind of get the story of Santa Claus, the reindeer, and the elves. Now, so where did St. Nicholas come from? The concept of St. Nicholas. We're told that Santa Claus came from a bishop called St. Nicholas. But here's the question. Did St. Nicholas ever exist? Or did St. Nicholas, was that the name of the pagan god of death, and the Catholic Church adopted it and created it? Let's find out. What do they say? In the 1970s, the Second Vatican Council formally stated that no Roman Catholic bishop by the name of Nicholas had ever existed. They went further on to say in Vatican II, they confessed that the legends attributed to this saint, quote unquote, had no Christian origin and probably came from pagan traditions. Let's prove it. The World Encyclopedia says, the belief that Santa Claus enters the house through the chimney developed from an old Norse legend. The Norse believed that the goddess Hertha appeared in the fireplace and brought good luck to the home. Druid homeowners would have a treat consisting of milk and pastries to appease this god that came down into their chimney into the fireplace. Of course, that's where we get the milk and cookies from. So here's the question, who's who? On the right, you have Santa Claus. On the left, you have our Messiah. Both in white, both stained in red. One in blood, the other in blood. The question is, which blood are we talking about here? So as we work through here, watch this.